Okay, so we're going to talk about slope. Now, this is a review from a previous course. Do you remember what the slope formula is? Okay, so if you have 2 points in a plane, let me just kind of do it this way. If you have 2 points in a plane, let's call this x2, y2, and let's say this right here is x1, y1. Remember those notations? And here's the line. How do you find the slope of this line using this notation? Do you remember what the formula is? Very good. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So basically, you subtract the y coordinates from each other, and then you subtract the x coordinates from each other. But remember, when you subtract the y coordinates from each other, that's the numerator. The denominator is the x coordinates. And the order matters because you're subtracting. The order matters. Now, another phrase, and that's going to be important in a little while, another phrase that you learned was rise over run. Good. Rise over run. Rise over run. Okay? Now, let's talk about let's talk about using the slope formula. All right, find the slope of the line containing each pair of points. All right, find the slope of the line containing each pair of points. What? X1, Y1. X1, Y1. And this is X2, Y2. So remember last semester when you first started about this, we used that notation, X1, Y1. So that represented your first point, and the subscripts, these are subscripts, and the subscripts, the 2's represent the second point. All right, suppose my 2 points are these, -7, 2, and 4, -3. So -7, 2, and 4, -3. Remember what we did last semester? We label those points. It helps if you label these. So this is my first, if I consider this to be my first point, then this x coordinate, I'm going to label it x sub 1, and this would be y what? Sub 1. And this would be x sub 2, y sub 2. So it helps if you label them. And then all I want to do is find the slope. You just plug and chug. You plug and chug into your formula. So remember the formula, and remember the symbol for slope is lowercase l. So you subtract your y coordinates. Now I'm going to put y2 first. So what's y2? I've got to subtract. Remember subtract. You actually have to write subtraction. Y1, which is 2. Now remember the order matters. So if I put y2 first, then I've got to do x2 first. Okay? You got to put them in the correct order. So if I started with y2, I've got to start with x2. So what is x2? That's why it helps if you label these. 4 subtract a what? -7. Okay. Now let's simplify this. What's a -3 and a -2? -5. All right, now be careful with this one. 4 subtract a -7 means the same thing as 4 plus 7, which is what? 11? So what's your slope? -5, 11. Okay? Now, let's discuss this slope in relation to how it looks in a plane. So if I plot these 2 points real quickly, and here's the way I'm going to do this. I'm not using grid paper at all. I want you to think about this point. -7, 2 is in what quadrant? This is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. -7, 2 is in what quadrant? The second. So remember, you go to the left 7 and what? Up 2. So y'all agree that's that point right here? Negative 7, 2. 4, negative 3 is in what quadrant? 4, negative 3 is in the fourth, right? 4, negative 3 is down here. Quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I draw the line going through them, we say this. As I go from left to right, your line is falling. It's going down. Your y values are decreasing. See those y values? What's happening to those y values? They're decreasing. So we say the line is falling. So if the slope is negative, your line is going to what? Fall. Okay? So since the slope is negative, the line falls. All right? Let's look at number 2. So plug and chug. Number 2. Negative 2, negative 1, 6, 3. Negative 2, negative 1 is your first point, and 6, 3 is the other. Label your points. So let's call this x1. This will be y1. This is x2, y2. Yeah. So your slope, equals what's going to be listed first in the numerator? Y2, which is 3. You subtract y1, which is negative 1. So it's not 3 plus a negative 1, it's 3 minus a negative 1. What's the denominator? No. That's why it's important to label those. So you got to write what first? X2, which is 6. Subtract a what? Subtract a what? Negative 2. What's the numerator? What's 3 subtract a negative 1? And what's 6 subtract a negative 2? 8, which reduced is 1/2, right? 1/2. Now you notice that this time the slope is positive. So let's see what happens if the slope is positive. So real quickly, just drawing an x, y axis. Negative 2, negative 1 is in what quadrant? The third quadrant, somewhere around here, right? You agree? Yep. 6, 3 is in what quadrant? First. When I draw the line, we say this line rises. So as I go from left to right, the y values are increasing. So your line rises. So if the slope is positive, your line is going to do what? Rise. So the slope is negative, your line falls. If the slope is positive, your line rises. Okay. Let's look at number 3. Let's suppose my point is 8, negative 2, and 8, 4. 8, negative 2, and 8, 4. Okay, you find the slope. You can label your points x1, y1, x2, y2. So the slope will be 4 subtract negative 2, and 8 subtract 8. So that's 6 divided by 0, which is undefined. So the slope is undefined. Slope is undefined. Which means it has no slope. Very good. So if I look at this in terms of a line, if I look at this in terms of a line, 8, negative 2 is in what quadrant? 8, 4 is in what quadrant? But directly above it, right? Yeah. What kind of line is this? It's a vertical line. It's a vertical line. And remember, the slope of a vertical line, no. The slope of a vertical line is undefined, or no slope. So undefined slope means you have what kind of line? vertical line. Now she made a mistake and mentioned 0. We got to be careful.
That wasn't me. I don't know who that was.
So let's do one more with this. Number 4. Number 4. We have 6, negative 3, and negative 2, negative 3. 6, negative 3, and negative 2, negative 3. Okay, so you denote your points, x1, y1, x2, y2. So this time the slope will be y2, which is negative 3, subtract negative 3.
And then -2.
Negative 2 subtract 6. What's the numerator? What's the negative 3? You have negative 3 subtract negative 3. Isn't that the same thing as negative 3 plus 3, which is 0? What's the denominator?
4.
Negative 8.
Oh, -8.
And what is 0 divided by negative 8? No, it's not. 0. 0 divided by negative 8 is 0. Now, don't say that's undefined. It's undefined only if the denominator is 0. So I do have a slope here. In number 4, I do have a slope. What is that slope? 0. In number 3, I did not have a slope. There is no slope because the slope is what? Undefined. So when the slope is undefined, you have what kind of line? Vertical. When the slope is 0, it's horizontal. So if you look at those two, if you look at the line that goes with those 2 points, 6, negative 3 is in the 4th quadrant. Negative 2, negative 3 is also in the 4th quadrant, but at the same level. The 3rd quadrant. And you get what kind of line? Horizontal. So a slope of 0 is what kind of line? It's a horizontal line. A slope that's undefined gives you what kind of line? Vertical. All right, what I want you to do now is this.